So here we'll just make a few comments about how Jesus is presented as a healer in Matthew's Gospel. First of all, just kind of note that almost all of Matthew's stories about Jesus' healing activity are taken from Mark. In other words, Matthew's Gospel is dependent upon the Gospel of Mark, and so many of Mark's stories about Jesus' healings are also found in Matthew. And so we're going to spend a little bit more time about the healing of Jesus as they're recorded in Mark, since that's where Matthew has gotten them from. So when we're looking at Mark's gospel, we'll talk about some of the way in which Mark presents Jesus as a healer. But some of these activities that are taken from Mark are connected to the idea of faith and forgiveness. That is, a person who is being healed is also being told that their sins are forgiven, or they are told that they are healed because of their faith, or sometimes even the faith of others. And so there's this connection in Matthew with faith and forgiveness and the activity of healing. Now, sometimes Matthew shares with Mark the overall description of Jesus as being involved in a healing activity. Now, there is one story in Matthew that is not in Mark, but it also occurs in Luke. Some scholars will call this a Q source. Q refers to a German word which identifies material that is unique to Matthew and Luke. And it's considered sometimes a independent source. Now there's a great deal of debate about whether or not such a source actually did exist, or if there is some other way to explain the existence of this material that is found in both Matthew and Luke. But there is one story that both of them share that Mark doesn't have, and this is the story of the healing of a non-Jew servant. We don't know the ethnicity of the servant, but we know that this centurion had a servant, and he wanted to have Jesus heal him. And this is an illustration in Matthew's Gospel of the faith of a non-Jew, and that even this faith of this non-Jew is rewarded with the healing of this servant. So that's a unique situation. The only unique story or stories in Matthew that has to do with healing is there's a story of two blind men who are healed and a mute man who is exorcised of a demon. So this story are not connected to issues of forgiveness. It is an exorcism story with the mute man, and it is a kind of a response to the blind men and their recognition of Jesus' identity. He is son of David. So Matthew doesn't really do an awful lot with these stories besides just demonstrating Jesus does them, but he does use the story of the healing of the mute man to because it's an exorcism, to generate a controversy with the Pharisees, who claim that Jesus' exorcism is something that is done by the prince of demons. In other words, he's doing this by the power of Satan, which is seen or would be understood as kind of ridiculous, since Satan wouldn't want to cast out demons out of people. That would be kind of working against Satan's own household, and the idea of a house divided cannot stand. So that's the only unique story in Matthew. And again, they keep up with the idea that healing is something that is offered by Jesus in response to an understanding of who he is, or an understanding of the demonstration of his power. Matthew is more interested in his gospel in portraying Jesus as a teacher than he is as a healer. And so while they are present there and they continue on the same kind of themes that are found in Mark's gospel, Matthew doesn't do a whole lot more with the healing activity of Jesus. He focuses more on what Jesus has to teach and how his teaching comes with authority, and how his teaching in some way portrays him as a person kind of like Moses, who kind of gives reinforces God's will, displays what God's will is. So the healing activity kind of takes a back row to the more important issue of Jesus as a teacher in Matthew's gospel.